Thank you so much for coming tonight. We are very fortunate to have Mr. Chen with us tonight for the book talk and the signing for his latest book, My Last Empress, which just released on October 2nd. Mr. Chen grew up in deep south of China, running barefoot in muddy fields and riding the backs of water buffaloes. In his tiny Fujian village, water was fetched from an ancient well swimming with snakes, and the only lights that burn in most households were hissing kerosene lanterns. His family was beaten, his father thrown in reform camp, and young Chen, at the age of 9, was threatened with imprisonment. Unfailing family love helped him survive in a dysfunctional society, and he found unexpected love and friendship with 4 other hoodlum outcasts. But dreams made him soar above the poverty and persecution. His first encounter with a Christian woman, a Baptist professor, was life-changing. She taught him English and opened the possibility of another world. He excelled in college at Beijing Language and Cultural University and stayed on as a professor of English after graduating, top in his class. Da arrived in America at the age of 23 with $30 in his pocket, a bamboo flute, and a heart filled with hope. He attended Columbia University School of Law on his full scholarship, and upon graduating worked for the Wall Street investment banking firm of Rothschild. His memoir, Colors of the Mountain, was compared to Angela's Ashes and was the object of intense bidding war among 5 top New York publishing houses, and went on to become a New York Times bestseller, published in 6 other languages. He also wrote the novel Brothers and children's books China's Son, and was also for the young children, which is also very famous, and Wandering Warrior, which was published by Random House. It's my pleasure to present Mr. Da Chen.
Thank you so much, Swadish. I am an old friend of this wonderful library, this beautiful town, and I feel indebted to the 2 Debbies before Swadish, and I think one of the Debbies, little one, is here, and Swadish, and Swadish was so wonderfully passionate about her job. She went all the way down to this June, went down to BEA in Manhattan, where all the publishers were putting on a very big book show, and she came to our Random House stand and said, "Where is Da Chen? I want to see her." and that's why I'm here. And she was also, I have to say that in any community, if you have somebody who's so dedicated to her job, it is the good fortune of this community and good fortune for people like me, because this event, I know that was all over the internet. My publicist at Random House said, "Who is Swadish?" I remember I say always use my Westchester's secret weapon. So she was very impressed. She said, "Well, you have been to a lot bigger events, all like New York City and in Nashville and everything. But this is and in the dedication, and that's why I feel fortunate to have known you as a librarian and as a friend. I still kept her. A while ago when I published Brothers, she gave me this good fortune elephant pen holder. It is still sitting at my desk. I think it's the good fortune that brought me to continue to do what I do. I want to thank you for this for coming here during the weekdays and such a lovely day outside. I'm holding a bamboo flute, Chinese dizi, and I tell you, I didn't go to any music school. So not the greatest flautist, but I played for my events because it came from my childhood. And now I'm a father, and I'm getting to be old and become very nostalgic about things that were simpler and when we were younger. And I grew up in the southern part of China, Fujian province, in a very small village that I call, in Chinese, called Yellow Huanshi, but I translate that into Yellowstone. And I grew up during the period when China was still sort of drowned in that black and white era of revolution, and that village was very poor. We faced the sea, and to our west were the Hui Mountains of Fujian, and it was a very isolated little village. We didn't have any books to read, even though now we look at the book, and each single copy of a book was such a luxury for us at that time. We didn't have electricity. We would go to walk for 4 hours to go to another village to catch a movie once a year, because in our village movies didn't happen. We have no electricity, and so books became such a luxury. And yet, no matter how deprived you were, the more deprived you were, the more wanting your desire is. And I was one of those really skinny but big-headed village boy. Skinny because we didn't have much to eat. Big-headed because the head is filled with all the improbable, impossible desires and dreams. And nowadays I've traveled far and near, go to other countries, and everywhere I go, I make sure I see a big city, and I also see a village, because I always like to see a village, because village is really the face of a culture, of a nation. And everywhere I go, in whatever continent it might be, I always see the shadows of the same skinny, big-headed boys, village boys running around. And under these leafy trees, there is always a napping old man, an old man napping under a tree. And I thought that was the same old man who was napping when I was in my childhood. In my village now, he's napping under a Greek olive tree. Now he's napping under a palm tree somewhere in South America. And so I think, and I came to a conclusion as a writer. I said that it is these napping old men who make the world's villages immortal, and all the skinny, big-headed boys and girls that make all those little villages live on forever. And so I was one of them. And one day, when I was 9 years old, I asked my father for a musical instrument. And my father, who didn't have much money, he was fired as a middle school Chinese language teacher in our little village, because her father had been a disgraced landowner. So my father was dirt poor. He didn't have much money. And so one thing that you learn very young as a kid of a poor family, was that you never ask your parents for the things they did not have, which was money. And if you ask for the things that did not have, you're going to get smacked a lot in your head. And I did. That's why he explained partially the reason why my head was bigger. Yeah. But childhood was childhood. Childhood was wanting, was wantoned, and the world would not have any other way than that, because that is the most powerful desire of any being, of humanity. And so my father that day took me to our village's flute maker, and our village's flute maker was run by a man, the napping old man. he always naps. We walk by his studio, and he always naps. And he grew this very fine knuckle bamboos in his backyard, and seasonably he would cut them into various sizes, like this, and hung them onto the ceilings to let them dry before he carved them into flutes. And he also doubled as a fortune teller. And still remember that magical moment my father brought me in there, and all the flutes hanging from the ceiling were sort of dancing in the air because the sea breeze was coming through the window. And my father spent 75 fen, which is probably about 10 pennies, money then, American money then, to buy me the smallest flute that he could afford, not this one. And ever since then, he taught me how to play a repertoire of Chinese southern local music, and it was this very instrument that salvaged my childhood, living in a very isolated, in deep deprivation. I still remember playing the music in a really quiet morning in a southern village, letting this music sort of reaching the far mountains, and the only people listening to my music were the water buffaloes moving back to me gradually. And I remember feeling suddenly connected with the world beyond this village, this little place, via the music that I play. And suddenly I wasn't alone anymore. I wasn't that little boy standing in the corner of this earth anymore. I was the one belonging to the rest of humanity. And to that extent, it really salvaged my childhood. And also, and now that I've gone far and everywhere and become a father myself, but everywhere I go, I somehow always manage to bring a flute with me without intending to. It was like part of the necessity. As my wife, Sunny, who's an American-born Chinese, ABC, she always brings her Shiseidos, face cream, because her face is very pretty. And I always pack a flute. And also the brush that I've been signing the books with, a brush from my grandfather who had taught me when I was a little boy, his hand over mine, trying to instill that gentlemanly, intellectual desire in the little boy in that little muddy little village that we grew up in. And I'm really grateful that they gave me this. And so everywhere I go now, they go with me. My grandfather, my mother, and my father. And by the way, my mother lives with us, so everywhere I go, she goes anyway. Presently, she's in California. I just recently bought a house in California, in Los Angeles. So we're kind of bi-coastal. And my mother said that it's so breezy here. Yeah. But anyway, we're very fortunate to have her. Our father passed away, but so in that spirit, and I do feel that each time I play this music, I somehow get, my father up there and my grandfather up there. They feel kind of happy that because we celebrate them. And so in spirit, in remembering all your great fathers and mothers and grandparents, in that spirit, I want to dedicate this piece of music that my father taught me, and I invite you to close your eyes and follow me to China for just a little bit. Thank you. I just want to share with you why I write. I know that this is my 7th book, and every book I publish, every word that I write, I feel indebted to this great country called America. I really do. I was recently in a writers' conference in Hong Kong, and one of the very, I guess, prestigious Hong Kong writer turned around and said that you'll never be such a publishing success as you've been in Hong Kong, and which is the reality. And I said, well, I'm glad I'm not in Hong Kong, So, but it's kind of I think she meant it to say as a compliment or something. I just didn't come out quite right. And I actually, but reinforced the notion. It reinforced the idea that I owe this freedom to be able to write about what I want to write to this great country, still the greatest country. And I write because I always say, as I grow older and I begin to realize that in whatever we do and wherever we become, it all owes back to a particular moment or particular thing that really destines us to be who we are, what we do, and what we choose to be. And at this very moment, I just want to share with you. So at this very, very moment, when I'm standing here holding a bottle of water in the middle of a tucker hole, behind a basketball basket, slam dunking this speaking event with you, I am so happy to be at this moment doing this with you. I'd rather not do anything else but this, right here, right now, doing this very thing. And when I was signing these books with the brush of my grandfather's, I had the same feeling. I'd rather be making a mess on this beautiful page with this black ink, writing the letters most of you couldn't recognize. Vaguely knows what it means. But I said what I meant. And I think it's important that I feel that I am doing exactly what I want to do. I'm enjoying exactly what I'm enjoying doing most with you right at this moment. And that's what I call a sort of a very simple word called bliss. And that I owe to America. And I came here to go to graduate school, and I went to law school, and eventually I passed the New York State bar examination. Very nervous. I was in Jarvis Center. I actually lost about 10 minutes of the examination time because I drank too much tea that morning, and Jarvis Center was very far away. Any point to the bathroom was very far away, and I lost about 10 minutes, but I passed nonetheless. And I was a banker for some years and years, doing mergers and acquisitions. And I lived right behind Carnegie Hall. I walked to work at Rockefeller Center. When I was dating my wife, I had her come to under the Christmas tree to wait for me. It's a sure thing to make any girls fall in love with you. And that goes back to the writing at the same time. Setting is very important. You don't have somebody wait for you in a very cold shore somewhere. But I'm doing this now because of one particular moment in my life when I was 9 years old. My family used to own. By 1949, my family owned about 60-some% of the farming land in a very little village, and then that was also the year China became a communist country, the second communist country after Russia, and so when the Red Army was coming down from northern part of China along the coast from Beijing down to Shanghai and then finally to Fujian, When they got there, a general was holding a gun at my grandfather's head and said that turn over the deeds of your land to us, otherwise I'm going to kill you. And my grandfather was a poet. He was a drunken poet, you know. He didn't care. He said, take the thing. I don't care, you know. But my grandmother's three young brothers were not so smart. They resist the same gun-toting general, and this general shot these three brothers, young men, in the prime of their years, who died seconds within each other. And so I really couldn't bear to, each time I read about Russian Tsar's family ending, you know, under the gun of Russian Red Army, it always made me think of my three grand uncles. That family was basically ruined, gone, done. And so ever since then, our family was, they took the land, nationalized the land, I guess. But we also became a sort of pariah in a little village. And I wasn't aware of that because I was young. I was the youngest of the five children. But there's always this jarring fact that poking up into the dreamland of reality. And you sense that even when you were very young. For example, I would see my grandfather walk into the street and coming home with a bloody nose. And I saw other kids and young men throwing rocks at him. And I would come to embrace my grandfather and I'll ask him why. And I couldn't understand. He would just shut me aside. I couldn't understand because in our culture, especially in the very feudal, old-fashioned village where I came from, the older you are, the more esteemed you are, the more revered you are. Each village wedding banquet, the banquet cannot start until the oldest guy or oldest woman was carried in to his or her seat and then lift up the chopsticks and then the celebration begins. That is the village tradition. But why was my grandfather getting beaten up? I could not quite understand. And they tried to explain to me because he was so and so and so, and I was too young to understand that. But reality came to me one particular day when I was a day like this. You know, blue sky, white clouds, the seagulls were singing in the air, and I was playing in the street, and one of my friends said that let's come to our commune's headquarters to see something exciting. And commune's headquarters was one of the two beautiful churches built by Baptists from Kansas City. In 1920s, 30s, even earlier, missionaries from all over the world came to China to save the souls there. And this particular group of people went to our village. They not only built the chapel, the church there, they also built the clinics, hospital, but also school where my mother went. And my mother to this day remembers very fondly of a pastor's wife called Mary. And that bond, long time ago, so many a zebra of years ago, it still stays within her. And so the same year, 1949, these missionaries were driven away to come back to America. And one of the churches was turned into a communist headquarters. And this is where the communist leaders were making the speeches before the parade. And there were a lot of political meetings which became the main entertainment in our village. In a lack of entertainment, anything can be entertaining. And I've seen these militia leaders making great speeches without shirt and guns and everything, and standing right at the place where a pastor or a priest would be making a sermon. And then, at that time then, I didn't know how sacrilegious that looked, that picture, what was wrong with that. But now when I think back, it was pretty interesting. So that day I ran, and that became a sort of a center of the village. And that day I ran with my friends to this village headquarters, and I climbed all the way to the top of the window, and all the village children were hanging all over the windows, and leaders were inside. And we saw this grown-up man, hung by both thumbs to the ceiling, his feet barely touching the floor. And they were getting beaten up by 5 young militiamen with rifles butts, and they were going at him just savagely, and he was crying as if nobody was watching, shamelessly, in desperation. And I tell you, I have heard many things, but there's nothing more mournful, more sorrowful, more heartbreaking, more gut-wrenching than an adult's cry. May it be a man or a woman, you don't want to hear that cry. It is the most, it really goes sort of directly into the most tender part of your consciousness, your soul, and you kind of squirm, and you kind of want to throw up, and yet after a while children begin to giggle, like, well, you know what, I guess, watching somebody getting tortured could be fun too, and hey, look at the man, he was crying, and so slowly the ripple of giggles, and then people begin to laugh, and I joined them because it was fun. Man got beaten up, and so after a few rounds of this beating, and the rope that hung this man sort of swiveled over, and I saw my father's face. And I tell you, that was just a split of a second. Right? I sensed that my father saw me, and I saw my father, and his face was all unrecognizable. But no matter how unrecognizable, you know the way your father looks. To this very day was the worst moment of my life. Seeing someone who's your father, who you love very much, being reduced to like an animal in a street, and suddenly it was a blue sky day. The sky was still blue, but it is somehow the tone darkened. And it was a light-hearted day, and yet suddenly the weight of the world began to descend upon my shoulders. And the world was noisy. People were still shouting and screaming now at me because they saw my father's face as well, my friends. And yet, it was sort of muted as well. Muted. I knew what they were saying, but I couldn't hear their voice. And I think I probably passed out for the first time in my young life, and slowly I climbed down like a spineless little spider. And right there in the middle of our little village, under a shattering blue sky, I became a man. I no longer fear for myself. And the trouble is, I began to fear for my parents. Because I was nimble, I was skinny, I could run, I could fend for myself pretty good, but not my parents. And that day, my father died the first time. Even though he died years and years later, but he died first time in my young mind, before my young eyes. And the great thing about humanity is that after that, I came to love my father, not less, but more. And he was caught that day by commune because he had received a package from my uncle, his only brother, who had been living in Taiwan, which was an ally of USA. And by the illogic of communism, they begin to link my father as an American spy. And so So he was taken. And he didn't die that day. He was sent to a labor camp for 3 months. When he came back, he was all shaggy and everything, but he survived. And in that moment, as I now become a writer and I begin to search for the reason why I excel, why I enjoy writing so much, why I want to tell the stories that I tell, I found that particular moment of utter vulnerability and tenderness to be the very, very reason why I write. Is the moment of utter helplessness. And as I now continue to tell these stories of my childhood, and the story that were not necessarily free to be written and celebrated and published in China, but I'm here, I'm kind of a guy who got away. I'm on this side of the Pacific Ocean, and Random House is supporting me, and I'm published in 17 languages. People noticed that in Brother's last novel, I went directly face to face with the government. I revived the story of a Tiananmen Square massacre, but in this book, it's more of a historical fiction. And one of the book reviewers said that you still couldn't escape, you still couldn't avoid pointing finger at the sort of a regime dictatorship, and which is exemplified and summarized in the gist of what a forbidden city and last emperor, last dynasty was to our consciousness. And I want to write because I want to tell the stories that cannot be told. I want to write because it is important that a nation, not only a culture, a nation not only should be known for its brilliant successes, economic growth, but also for all its flaws, and so that we would know the things that we do to help make it better. And I could never have been able to do what I do had I been back there. I'm here. I'm this very moment that I am with you in this basketball stadium. It's a celebration of freedom of speech. And every night you watch, and I sometimes catch a glimpse of Jay Leno or David Letterman making fun of President Obama or former president. And it's fine. We laugh about it. But if you really do that, if someone of that stature on TV make fun of the great leaders in China, I think you'll be gone faster than Conan O'Brien. And you will not get cable, okay? As a result, you will sort of be cabled. So, and I reflect on that. It's a daily occurrence. You see this, and I always say that, it really is expensive to be funny. And that's why there are very few very, very funny Chinese men, because just a little too afraid to be funny. And funny comes from deep cost. That's why America have the most comedians, because we can be funny. But in many, many other places of the world, you cannot be as funny. And as a writer, as somebody who feel this lightness of being able to say what I want to say and share this with you in public, to me is a great celebration of this great nation. Don't let anyone else tell you otherwise. This is by far still the greatest country in the world. And I'm so grateful there is such a place as USA, because if you read many, many books or see many, many movies, it's always that final place where the heroes or heroines arrived, ravaged, broken and hungry, and then they see a Statue of Liberty, and everything will be fine, and everything is fine. And I thank you, thank America, and thank you all for this particular moment. Any questions? Yes.
Just the geography of where your town was in the southern part of China? Was it hilly or was on?
It is Fujian province is southeastern part of China. If you look at Chinese map, it's probably the closest mainland China point to Taiwan. Right there in the belly button of the rooster, that is a Chinese map. Beijing will be somewhere near the neck of this turkey, and Shanghai in the chest, and Fujian is right there in the belly button. And you don't want to know where Hong Kong is, yeah. Further south, yes. Yes.
Tell us a little bit about your current book.
Current book, yes. Thank you. Current book was it was a historical fiction, and it was about a Yale man. The first time I debuted a American protagonist, American main character, and it is so because as the great writer Nabokov, the man who wrote Lolita, once said that he was a Russian immigrant. It took him 20 years to be able to assimilate, to become American enough to be able to write a convincing, truthful American character. And it took me that long as well. I've seen a lot of foreign writers who venture to write American tales, and they come out really odd, simple realities. But more importantly is the spirit of an American man or American woman. And but this book came to me because I was one day when I was doing a book tour, I was invited to speak at Yale University, and after that, one of the deans said that you should come see this before you go. And he took me to see this statue, bronze statue of a man looking very somber, standing in front of this big dining hall called Commons. I don't know when any of you are Yale graduates. I heard that it's a very popular big dining hall. But this man is called Mr. Pickens. And the caption at the base of this bronze statue says he was the first Yale graduate beheaded by a Boxer rebel in China about 100 years back. And I was having this writerly moment, standing man to man facing another man, and I felt this energy and brilliance. The guy was dead. He was just a bronze statue, but he was vividly alive, and he was very heroic. He actually, when the Boxer rebels were trying to purge China of all the foreign missionaries, the missionaries coming in, and there was a nationalistic resistance, and Boxer rebels were part of that movement about 100 or some years ago. And when the rebels were coming to his chapel, he could have run away. He went from Yale to China as a missionary, but he stayed to save a Chinese boy servant. And by doing so, he was caught and his head was cut off. And so right there, I had this moment with this man, and I was so inspired by him. And the book came to me in full already, but I'm not going to do any more research about his life. So I just took the spirit, this very, very ethereal moment that I shared with him, and I created a love story for him. To be able to go the same track, but for a very different reason. This time he was not in the business of church and God. He was in the business of falling in love with a beautiful woman. And this woman happened to be the daughter of an American missionary who had just returned from China, looking blue-eyed and blonde and yet utterly Chinese, looking like an Empress. And this young man fell in love with her because she also played the bamboo flute. Do you know that Pearl Buck was more Chinese than American? She grew up there, and when I was reading Good Earth, the funny thing was, when I was reading it, I actually knew exactly what the next sentence is going to be. The sort of a literary intuition, it's very similar to mine. I'm not saying that as good as hers, but there was an uncanny moment. I was on Diane Rain's show to talk about Pearl Buck's Good Earth, which to me by far is one of the greatest novel ever set anywhere on this earth. But I sense that literary intuition coming together. And so this man fell in love with this beautiful girl. And it would not be a novel if the beautiful girl didn't die. I always say that a book, a novel, a good one is always live, comma, distorted. Or if you want to say it more in the street language, life screwed up. The novelist come in to make up the screwed up part of life, and then it becomes a novel. And so he spent, this man, his growth was stunted basically. He began to continue to can only love very young woman, because his love for her was so very powerful that she began to possess him, all his consciousness. And he spent his years preparing himself to go to China to look for her lost spirit, existing in between the wall and the wallpaper within the Forbidden City, which is known to have a lot of ghosts, and she might be one of them. And this is the gist, the thematical drive of this novel. It's about love, it's about falling in love, it's about the power of love. It's also about how thin the line is between the departed and the living. Yes?
You don't have to reply at the risk of being political, but there has been a constant dispute about the ownership of the offshore islands.
Right.
How do you think this can ever be resolved, and what would you suggest? How would you suggest it be resolved?
This is like the fight between brothers. It's a definite thing. I don't know. I wish I know the answer to it, but it became a sort of a metaphor for the hidden and the potent hatred existent between the two countries. As you know, that Japanese and Chinese people, they have a long history of having this feud, and anything between them could be augmented into gigantic proportion. So I'm trained as a lawyer, but I'm not a maritime, property kind of thing. It's the Chinese, as for the longest time. I know that when I was studying, when I was a college student and high school student, they always pointed out that this island is theirs. And I'm sure in the Japanese textbook, they always point out this is hers. So I really, I cannot be a very fair judge. I'm biased to begin with, and I don't know enough either. But it's interesting. I think the interesting part is how it's being flamed into a big thing because of the thing that they feel for each other. There's a lot of hidden thing that we don't see, but each time there's something happening between these two nations, it always gets into a very big thing, because Chinese people feel that they have been wronged for a long time, and they always wanted in some way to get back to it. So it's a very long story, it's a very complicated, and it's very unfortunate as well. I only want peace in the world, really,
We all.
Yeah. Nobody. It's not going to do anyone any good if this further intensifies. And it could become a problem, because they might seem like a very peaceful neighbors, but there is so much hidden there that it could leap into a big flame. And let's hope it doesn't. Yes?
Do you still have family left in your little village?
I do. I have two sisters and one brother, and I know that I describe them as young people in my memoirs, but they are all actually my brother and my oldest sister. They're all grandparents, And when I told a group of students who read my memoir, they start laughing like, "What? Are you kidding me?" I thought they were just young people, but it is. You know, we all age. Look at me. You know. And yet, childhood and the memories still remains that way. You guys are the best. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Hug up.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chen. It was really excellent program at the talk. And I also want to mention in October 29th, Monday, we are going to have another author, Terry Brennan, who wrote Sacred Cipher, and he's with us today. So hope you can join us on October 29th. And also just want to let you know a few upcoming events. On November 3rd, Saturday at 1 o'clock, we are going to celebrate Diwali, which is an Indian festival of light and is sponsored by Association of Indian in America. So hope you will all come and join us. There will be dances, food, henna, and much more. And also November 17th at 11 a.m. Saturday, we are going to celebrate Celebration, which is a storytelling festival. And once again, thank you everyone for coming, and thanks to Friends of the Library and Connie De Laurentiis and Carmel Ballas, Sandy and Benham for organizing the refreshment for all of you. And thank you, and hope everybody enjoy the refreshment and enjoy the talks. Okay? Thank you.
Animals have pretty good noses. They sniff out what they need. It's there for them at the New Rochelle Humane Society. For 100 years, we've provided a caring transitional home for animals in need in 17 Westchester communities and beyond, while we search for the right permanent home for each animal. Help us help more of them follow their noses to a happy home. New Rochelle Humane Society, from our home to yours.